Kathleen Wynne.
So first of all, I just want to flip around that notion of why we do the things that we do. And the reason that we have a poverty reduction strategy, and we're the first government in the history of Ontario to have a poverty reduction strategy, is that it is good social policy and it's good economic policy. The more that we can reduce the gap between those who have and those who don't, the better off we're going to be. The more equitable our society, the healthier our society will be economically and socially. So I want to continue to move on our poverty reduction strategy. We're due to set a new round of targets in 2013. I want to focus on people with disabilities. We started out working on children who are living in poverty. We need to now move that to the next phase and look at what is it that we can do to support, to lift people, adults who are living in poverty, people with disabilities. We need to coordinate our low-income dental plans, and we need to push the government, the federal government, on a long-term affordable housing strategy on which we will work with them in partnership, but we need the federal government to partner with us.
Thank you. Charles Sousa.
Yeah, every Ontarian needs and deserves to have a chance. And unfortunately in our society, there are many who are chronic for whatever reasons, being it disabled, mental issues. There's a number of issues. And we have to recognize that and provide permanent support to support them. And we recognize even at this time of year, for many of us who volunteer and do Christmas events, helping those in need. What I found very enlightening, though, is over the last 4 years that I've been supporting members of my community who are in need, they are giving back even more than ever before because they've been given a chance. And part of that is around education. Part of that is around experiential learning, mentorship, cooperative programming, anything where they can have an opportunity to provide value. And you can't penalize them, though, once they start to work, because then the motivation is gone. So it's a complicated issue, obviously. Deb Matthews' work on poverty reduction, the recent study that's being done, a lot of good recommendations there about measuring. But what's important, and I've said this before, is building our economy and job creation in order to provide more opportunity to afford the things that matter to us as a caring and compassionate society.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sousa.
Thank you.
Glenn Murray.
The most important thing we do is to eradicate poverty. I built a community health center from nothing when Jake Epp said that AIDS was a moral issue and not a health issue. The thing that taught me most about politics was how to make tough decisions, and you haven't lived through something until you've taken a young man with AIDS into his parents' living room, sat down because he can't talk, and tell his parents that this young fellow's gay and that he's not going to make it through the summer. Nothing in politics that I've ever faced has come as difficult as those decisions. It gives you a temperament and an ability to withstand things. I then did street outreach work. I fostered the most amazing young man who survived fetal alcohol syndrome and abuse, and I worked with many kids, and I built street outreach programs to get kids safe. And I saw Tory governments cut back those programs, take street workers off, and watch kids sell their bodies because they were too afraid to commit a crime where they would hurt someone else. We need to take this fight to Tim Hudak. We need to get back to protecting those health and social programs because we're liberals and we have to be counted on. And all of us up here have seen what's happened when Tories take over. We're at risk of that. I will go after Tim Hudak, and we'll tell real stories with real people, and we'll get sure that we never, ever have to live through the kind of crap we've lived through Conservative governments with closed hospitals and destroyed services again.
Thank you very much. Sandra Pupatello.
Thank you. I love that fire in him. I love that. The only time you're going to hear me say right to work is when it's in the context of people who are on our system and deserve the right to work. And that means people who are on ODSP who really want to work but need some support to do so. And it also is for people who are on OW, on welfare, but really want to move back into the workforce. We've got to help them get there. And in my view, a jobs and economy plan that focuses on everybody, including people who are part of the working poor, and having to develop supports to move them into the job that they want, that's part of our responsibility. These are the issues that moved me for being a Liberal volunteer like so many of you in 1994 to present myself as a candidate and win in that 95 election. I was on boards of agencies at that time watching what other governments were doing to our services for people who need help. Those are the things I want to bring as a focus. I'm going to stand in that same place on Friday where as a Minister of Community and Social Services, we made massive changes to our system to help them enter the workforce. We've got to do more because the challenges are just as great today. So it's due, it's time. And I want to have a best practices globally right here in Ontario. And that means figuring out how we help the working poor to move up to other jobs that they can actually afford to do so. I'm excited about the prospect, and I believe we have a responsibility on the equity scale when it comes to people and working and having a decent living.
Thank you. Very much. Gerard Kennedy.
I spent 13 years having the privilege of working for people that lived on the margins and looking in the eyes of people whose dignity was greater than I can express. People who, from when everything was gone and had to beg for food for their kids to help keep their families together. And I have to say, it got me into politics, but I'm not satisfied that we as Liberals have pushed ourselves where we need to go. There is an outlook available to us to look at people not for social programs and their cost, but instead for potential programs, how we maximize people's potential contribution to society. And we have right in front of us both Mr. Drummond's report and the report from on brighter futures and brighter prospects about how to move people forward. The question was about a target. Our target needs to be significant because every 2% of people that we move off of welfare into some active participation. So for example, the 80% of disabled people that have significant education, every 2% saves us $120 million. And we need to deal with the extra costs, and we need to also provide the real follow-through in that dignity, which is a place where people can work. They don't want a hand out, and they don't want to be condescended with a hand up. They want a hand hold. And it's time for Liberals to broaden now the consensus about how we move on social programs because Drummond tells us we have to, and other people are telling us it's time to do more than we have, and this is the right time to move ahead.
Thank you. Eric Hoskins.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, this speaks to the heart of what it means to be Liberals. And I think we all should be very proud. I'm proud that when I was Minister of Citizenship and when I was the Minister of Children and Youth Services, I was also chair of the province's poverty reduction strategy, and we lifted 40,000 people, 40,000 children and their families out of poverty, and we should be very proud of that. But there's a lot more work to be done. There are 4,000 children in this province that are living in poverty. There are 150,000 children that use food banks each and every year in this province. 150,000 families are on wait lists for affordable housing. And when a family or a parent can't feed his or her child, nothing else matters. And when you're poor, your health suffers, your education suffers, and your self-esteem suffers. So there's a lot that we need to do still, and we need to be proud of the success that the Liberal government has done over the years, but there's much more to be done. My plan, my prescription for a healthy economy, an economic plan yesterday that I released has a section in it, one of the 5 points on further poverty reduction strategies. And it includes making sure that those full-time adults who are earning minimum wage are living above the poverty line, that they're earning above the poverty line, and it may be necessary to increase minimum wage to do that. It means a pharmacare program for low-income working families, and continuing to increase the Ontario Child Benefit. So these are important measures, and I fully endorse the Social Assistance Review Program, the report that was written by Francis Lankin and Munir Sheikh as an important blueprint that we need to follow.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hoskins.
Our second question about poverty and social services deals with immigrant integration. What's the role of the province in helping new immigrants to Ontario reach their full potential? First to speak is Kathleen Wynne.
I think one of the real issues that we face in this particular area is the fragmentation of our programs, and I think to the extent that we can find a way to bring programs together and create opportunities for people who come to this country who are who want to be part of the economic and social life of the community, if we can help them to find their way into the various systems that they're looking for. One of the first things I did in government when I was a backbencher and a parliamentary assistant to the Minister of Training, Colleges and Universities was I worked on a report with the adult education sector on how to create hubs for learning and opportunity. And it goes beyond just English as a second language programs or particular training programs, because each person who comes to the country has different needs and is looking for a different avenue. But often they access those programs, those opportunities randomly or by word of mouth. And so I think we have a huge responsibility to do a better job across ministries and in communities of gathering together all of those opportunities, whether it's Employment Ontario, whether it's programs run by colleges and schools, whether it's training programs, bring them together and allow that access in a much more coordinated fashion.
Thank you, Ms. Wynne. Next up is Charles Sousa.
Well, as Minister of Citizenship and Immigration until recently, about a month or so ago, I worked pretty hard over the last year developing an immigration strategy for the province of Ontario, the first that it's ever had. Because until now, we've always relied on the Canadian immigration system. And Ontario has been a great beneficiary of that because we receive roughly half of all immigrants into Canada. But recently, decisions have been made unilaterally by the federal government at your expense. We have lost a lot of economic class immigrants coming to this province. And as a result, we've lost a lot of funding to go with it. Over $200 million was left in a previous agreement, and more recently, over $75 million has been cut. And that has hurt our integration and our settlement programs because Ontario still has a high level of retention of immigrants. The rest of the provinces are getting it, and their retention rate is much lower. Our integration and settlement agencies are in need, and they've been cut. So all the more reason we need to put forward a strategy that's strong in support of our new Canadians and giving them more opportunities and enable them to succeed, because when they succeed, we all succeed.
Thank you, Mr. Sousa. Glenn Murray.
There's a lot more we got to do. You know, it's this neighborhood planning process that I do with the other elected local officials. We discover there's a huge disconnect between what we're spending money on as a government and what our community needs. Our biggest expenditures are expanding our hospitals. What I'm hearing from communities is that Central Neighborhood House, which provides home supports, which is under huge fiscal pressure and collapsing many of its programs and operates on a shoestring compared to a hospital, is underfunded. They provide services to newcomers. And we have to become more culturally competent. I've gotten elected in all kinds of places by hundreds of thousands of people. Some people, for whom their gun rack is their most important collection, to some for whose life at their Gurdwara is the most important thing. And what I've learned is that you have to be culturally competent. If you're a Tamil family living in my community, you likely have your mom and your dad and your extended family. You need a different set of home supports than you do if you're someone likely of British extraction who's living in Cabbagetown by themselves without the benefit, who actually needs the basic things done. So we need to start designing our programs not as cookie cutters, but as community-based. We actually have to move more services to the not-for-profit sector and stop the creeping privatization, which was there and then stalled with that. We also have to put some greater value on these same women's work. Many of these immigrants, Canadians who recently arrived, are personal support workers. They work for $27,000. They have 3 or 4 kids. And if they worked in a hospital, I'll just finish this, I'm sorry, $36,000, they're unionized, and they have a pension. You got to treat people in the community the same way you treat people in hospitals.
Thank you, Mr. Murray.